Defensive monsters clash in Tucson tomorrow night. Can Cincy pull off upsets of number one and number two? Or is this going to be one-way traffic in favor of the Wildcats?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network around. I'm your host, Leif Tulane, your resident college basketball guru, stats nerd, point guard by game, and ball knower by trade. And I'm excited, as always, to talk Arizona hoops with you today. And today we got a great guest talking Cincy ball. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today on the show, like I mentioned, Jeff Carr. He was covering the Bearcats, is covering the Cincinnati Reds for Locked On Network. He and I will break down the matchup between Arizona and a dangerous, very good defensive Cincinnati squad, discuss Cincinnati's potential route for another upset after beating Iowa State. Or will this game be one-way traffic? I'll address the keys for Arizona, the strengths and weaknesses of both teams. We can talk a lot there, but let's dive right in. First and foremost, Jeff, thanks for joining me. And I got to ask you a question. How did it happen? You guys beat Iowa State, number 2. And do you think it's something that is going to continue for Cincy? Because you guys have a good defense. You have talented players. Hasn't necessarily resulted in big wins until the other day.
Leif, I appreciate you having me. Yeah, to be honest with you, man, that was the 1 percentile of or the 99 percentile. Sorry, opposite way of their performance. I haven't seen them play that well on offense all year long. And to be honest with you, I don't know how they replicate that. There's been a lot of just meandering when they have the ball, especially late in games. There's not a clear-cut plan. And there are a couple of guys that if they get hot, they can help you out. But they had to get Jizzle James back on this roster midway through, non-conference play to really just incite some sort of offensive ability, because you're right, they can stop everybody. They force everybody to have their worst game on the offensive side of the ball, but they do just as much damage to their own offensive game in the way that they play. So it's very hard to say that I think that they can replicate this back-to-back games as much as I would love to.
And let me be clear here. When I say like an upset, this would be a pretty monumental upset. The one against Iowa State was an upset, and it deserved to be called that, but it was a 6-point spread, and it was a Iowa State team traveling to Cincy, and that's a formidable home crowd and a proud basketball program. Cincy's 10-8 though, and Arizona is 18-0. And according to KenPom, the spreads aren't out quite yet, but according to KenPom, it's a 82-65 advantage Arizona. So if Arizona were to lose in this game, it would absolutely be a disappointment. It absolutely would be noteworthy. But that doesn't mean Cincy doesn't present challenges. And that's kind of where I want to transition to. Like defense, I mentioned the cold open. I'm going to continue to talk about defense. These teams are both top 7 in defensive efficiency. Arizona number 2, Cincinnati number 7. The other thing about Cincinnati upon first glance, and I'll let you kind of analyze why, but I've watched them a little bit. Obviously, you've watched them a ton. They've played good teams. They lost to Louisville by 10. They lost to Houston by 7. They lost to West Virginia by 2. They lost to UCF, who just gave Arizona a run for their money, by 1. And then they beat Iowa State. So I feel like the record is not quite indicative of what this team has. And it's a very hungry team with kind of a win now because Wes Miller is certainly on the hot seat. So take me through the evolution of this team from kind of start of this season to where we are right now, because I think they're improving.
It's definitely been a lot of there's like young guys like Sean Abayev is a talent who should be at the top of this roster. It's just, it kind of feels like he's had some really rough games and he's taken a while to get back from them, and he'll have a good game here or there, and then he'll have another bad game that he's got to roll through because he's a freshman. And that's what most freshmen have to deal with, especially in this game. But I feel like the evolution of this team has just been, let's force everyone else to take as much time as possible with the ball, force them into a slow half-court offense, and on the other side, try to score as quickly as possible. The problem is, if they run into a defense that is good at slowing them down, then they don't really have a good half court game. They are a let's run and gun and throw up as many shots as possible, try to get a couple of rebounds, get a couple of putbacks, and get going. And if they're not able to get those rebounds, like if they get out rebounded, they lose. Period, plain and simple. They've got to out rebound people. But it's all about, can they win the pace of play and get the rebound game going, because they're not the kind of team that you see a very intricate half court offense that there's not a lot of movement. There is some isolation depending on who has the ball, but they're also a team that in the late game, it feels like in crunch time, if you've got a team that is able to rally, the Bearcats really don't have that answer on their offensive half. So that's going to be the hardest part for them, is that if there is a point where they're close in the game, and I mean late half, really, even first half, this was the same with Iowa State for a long time. They were in double digit as far as the lead goes against Iowa State in the first half. Final 3 minutes of that first half, Iowa State really came roaring back. And I kind of thought they were going to end up losing that game, but they were able to rally in the second half. I want to see more of that before I can believe that they would be able to at least prove KenPom wrong on this spread.
Yeah, the spread does seem high, considering I think this will be a lower scoring game than both teams' averages. We'll touch on that in a little bit, as well as some keys, but I've got something to address your main key of rebounding. Arizona has not been out rebounded in one game this year. They are 18-0 in rebounding. The last game was the closest they've had. They were only +1. And that was due to UCF being a very good rebounding team in their own regard. And also Mo Krivas did not play much of the second half. The other part I will tell you is, I think Arizona's greatest strength, and my listeners will know this, why I believe this is their greatest strength. Arizona's greatest strength to me is that you can take an All-American in Koa Peat, which I believe he will be. You can take an All-American caliber play in Koa Peat and have a non-factor game, and you still score 84 points against UCF. You can have Burries, who's the second leading scorer, Jaden Bradley and Mo Krivas, who average about 40 per game, score 20 in a game against Arizona State, and you score 89 points. So what I say all that to say this, they're going to reproducibly score between 85 and 95 points per game, and they're going to hold you under your averages because they get more shots and more good shots than the opposing team. So that's why I stand pretty strong in that I think Arizona will win this game. I think they will win this game decisively, but I do think that the spread is too high, and I do think that Arizona may struggle to score the 85 that I just mentioned. Like, they average 90 per game. So if they were under 80, it would be noteworthy. But that's a credit to what Cincinnati does. And for those of you who are statistically inclined, like myself and like Jeff, you've got 94.3 is the defensive rating for Cincinnati. That means they give up 94 points in 100 possessions. Well, I would guess this game's going to be 74 possessions. And so if you kind of add that up based on these two teams' averages, this game's going to be in the 70s. And I think that's on brand. As for Arizona, they give up 93 points per 100 possessions. So this should be a low-scoring game if that happens. But I want to ask one question before we get into the keys in the next segment. How does Cincinnati do in terms of taking care of the basketball versus forcing turnovers? Because I think that's the only way Cincinnati can really win this game, is if they force a ton of turnovers, and Arizona doesn't typically concede a ton.
They are in all the passing lanes. There's a lot of good defense that they play, and their offense has gotten better. I will say, like, during the non-conference, we were really worried about this team's ability to take care of the basketball, because for a long time, they were in the 300s in KenPom when it came to turnover percentage. They were giving the ball away at a very, very high clip. And while it doesn't look all that great at least KenPom has their offense at, 173rd in the nation, at one point, it was pretty much double that. I mean, they were in the 340s. It was looking horrible. And they've really righted the ship here recently. So at least the efficiency of bad turnovers doesn't, it's not going to be as detrimental as it was in the non-conference. The thing that I worry about a lot here, Leif, is that when it comes down to you need to make a play, and Arizona knows that you need to make a play. So Wes Miller's going to call timeout, set something up. I feel like 9 times out of 10, they come out of that timeout. There's a guy that gets cornered by at least 2 guys and tries to prepare for a 3-pointer. So that doesn't count as a turnover, but it pretty much is one because it's not a good shot. And so that's going to be the key for this, is can they keep those bad shots to a minimum and really force those turnovers to be the statistic rather than, okay, there's these other phantom turnovers that we're not counting.
Well, we'll touch on turnovers. We'll touch on rebounding, and a lot coming up next. The keys to the game, both for Cincinnati and for Arizona. All that and more coming up next on Locked On Wildcats. There's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there for the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. No more. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans, and it's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football, college basketball, any type of experience you want in just a few taps. The app is incredibly easy to use. I went from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes, and personally, I love my sports, so I needed to see exactly where I was going to be seated when I went to the U.S. Open. I needed to know exactly where I was sitting, and I got a great view. You know exactly what you're seeing with panoramic seat view. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We sincerely appreciate it. You already live your team every single day. So now take it up a level and go ad free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Wildcats with no interruptions, members only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. So go to lockedonwildcats.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes at the bottom of the description on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast to learn more. With that said, welcome back to Locked On Wildcats. Thank you, as usual, for tuning in. It's myself, Leif Tulin, joined by Jeff Carr of Locked On Reds, as well as former host of Locked On Bearcats or Locked On Cincinnati, and he is the expert at all things Cincinnati. So who better to bring in? And I'll give you the table first. I want you to give me a key for Cincinnati. I'm not going to say winning the game because I think that would be hard, but I want you to give me a key for Cincinnati making this a single-digit game.
We got to see Baba Miller a lot, and it's not just in one half. Baba Miller does this thing where it's like it's either the first half or the second half. He's got to be in both halves, and it's got to be the guy that if Day-Day's not getting his, because Day-Day Thomas is going to score for the Bearcats. That just happened. Jizzle James is starting to get back into the groove that he had last year, at least of scoring, and that's probably going to happen. He's going to throw up plenty of shots. Baba Miller's kind of got to be that like third option for them, but he's got to be super consistent. He's got to be able to drain those shots because he's going to get some opportunities, I think, on the wing, especially because he's kind of got everything to his game. It's all very inconsistent. And when will it show up? I think that's going to be a huge key for anything that the Bearcats are able to do, because without him, there really isn't that other guy. Like it just feels like it's Day-Day Thomas, Jizzle James, and like somebody else do something. Baba Miller's got to be that consistent dude that they can turn to in those moments.
Yeah, you need to find someone who can hit the hard shots that Arizona's stout defense will make you take. And in recent games, Themis Folks for UCF scored 30. Mo Odom hit tough shots. And I think Arizona's actually due for a lockdown performance. And I think that defensively, they've given up more points than they probably should have in terms of expected points. Like Masamba Diop for Arizona State, who I actually think should be an NBA player, hit 6 mid-range jump shots. Arizona's going to live with big guys taking mid-range jump shots all the time. Did he hit more than they expected? Absolutely. Did it become closer? Yes. So I do think there's got to be some difficult shot makers. And credit to Day-Day in that game against Iowa State. He hit a tough midi. James was good at the end of the game as well. I think it's going to be hard for Cincy to score, but the big key to me is you alluded to it. Cincy has no chance in this game, in my opinion, if Arizona wins the rebounding battle. And Arizona should win the rebounding battle because I think they force Cincy into harder shots than Cincy can force Arizona into, therefore have more defensive rebounds. But I have some stats to back this up. These are some good numbers here. So Cincy, when they have the ball, are not good at offensive rebounding. They rebound 30% of their misses, which is, pedestrian. It's 208th out of 365 teams. Arizona on defense only allows the opponent to get they're 11th in the nation. They only allow the opponent to get 25% of their misses. So that's very, very good. Arizona, on the other side, when they miss, they get 40% of their rebounds. So they get 2 out of 5 times, anytime they miss near the rim, they're going to get a tap back and put it in. Cincy, however, is even better at defensive rebounding than Arizona is, only allowing 24% of misses to go back to the opposition. So right there is the battle. Like, I think Arizona is going to win the defensive rebounds narrowly. I think they're going to win the offensive rebounds by a decent bit. And so they're going to have a plus, 8 to 10 or something. And at that point, I don't think Cincy can score reproducibly enough. So to me, that's the biggest key of this game.
What makes me really wonder is what can the Bearcats do at all on offense? Like, are they going to be able to drain a couple of more 3-pointers than they typically do because they don't shoot it well from outside the arc? And I know Kim Pom backs that up, but that's even just eye test, just like so many shell-shocked moments of where, okay, looks like you're going to drain a 3 and you don't. And that's just kind of been the way that this season has gone. And there's going to be a chess match whenever Arizona has the basketball, and there's going to be, let's throw something up the wall and see what sticks whenever the Bearcats have the ball, because there is a huge just overmatch between Arizona's defense and UC's offense. That's going to be a really hard part. And that's why I worry so much about this game, is that Ken Pom, I know that they have the Wildcats scoring a little bit more points than you would expect, but I wonder how many of those points get created from UC's offense and how Arizona is able to create in the transition here, because as much as turnovers are down, it's just the way that the Bearcats approach every possession that they have. It's very confusing to me. It doesn't feel like they have an identity, and if something works, they're going to continue to just spam that. If you play any video games with a little brother, a little cousin or something like that, it just feels like if they figure out the button that works, they're just going to keep hitting that button. Well, if Arizona was able to shut down that button, then I don't know what comes next. And that's going to be the hard part for me in this ball game, to see the Bearcats even make it a close game, to say nothing of an upset.
Yeah, and here's where I see this being one-way traffic, to circle back to why I mentioned that. Is it an upset alert, or is this one-way traffic? The reason I see this as one-way traffic is everything Cincinnati is very good at defensively. They're very good at rebounding. Arizona is better at. And then you also look at who Arizona has played. And I made this point that I think Arizona could be quietly on the way to being one of the all-time teams. But they've played Florida, who is one of the best rebounding teams in the country. They've played UConn, who right now is number 2 in the AP poll. They've beaten both. They've also played UCLA when they were top 15, and then they get into Big 12 play. So they're going to have tons of opportunities to beat good teams. But the reason the preceding matters is they've dominated on the glass against all those teams. They've dominated in terms of shot quality against all those teams. So a team like Cincinnati, I just pulled this up because I wanted to test my eyes, but I was going to say I feel like they shoot a lot of threes. I don't think they shoot it well. So they're 315th in three-point percentage at 30%. But their three-pointers account for 35% of their offense. So that means they need to shoot super well, because Arizona is going to take away the rim. That's what they do. Mo Krivas plays drop coverage. Tobe Awaka is back there as well. And they make you shoot hard shots from 2, and they make you shoot worse from 3. Like, they've played some very good three-point shooting teams. UCF went 8 of 26. Kansas State shot like 37 threes against Arizona and only hit 8 of them. So teams try to shoot more threes than they usually do against Arizona, and they rarely exceed their usual average, because they get bad threes and really hard 2s. So I think all of Arizona's strengths diminish the athleticism and the advantages that Cincinnati usually creates based on chaos. And so to me, I think Arizona's in a little bit in a get right spot. Like, I know they've won every game, but I don't feel like they were terribly convincing against UCF or ASU. They go back home and they play a team that's not good offensively. I think that could be a lower scoring output game for Arizona, but I just don't see Cincinnati being able to penetrate the defensive fortress that has been McHale Center and Arizona's front line.
It does seem like Arizona is going to be able to force them. And I really hope, and part of me saying it this way just to see if I can, challenge, and then you'd be like, hold my beer. We'll see what we got here. But it feels like Arizona is going to be able to force them to do a lot of long-range 2-point shots. Yep. And that is where Wes Miller's offense completely disintegrated last year. And they said this year it was going to be a very concerted effort to get rid of that. It's going to be at the rim or behind the 3-point line. And at least early on in the season, that's how it felt. But this is just a matchup nightmare for so many different reasons. Obviously, you're undefeated, you're number one, you're in a matchup nightmare for anybody. But the way that Arizona likes to push you defensively, it feels like there's going to be an odd challenge in this game of can they figure out how to get to the rim or shoot 3-pointers, and it feels like they're going to just fall into the trap of the mid-range 2-point jumper that Arizona is going to just absolutely invite them to try to make on a regular basis.
Yeah, I guess the next question, well, we can address this in the next segment, would be if Cincinnati finds a way to make this game ugly and kind of into their style, how do they do so? So I'll let you ponder that while we head to break, as well as we'll give our predictions and kind of who's going to lead the way for our respective teams. So we'll take a break here on Locked On Wildcats, come back with all that and more heading into what should be the thick of Big 12 play between two teams desperate need of a win. Welcome back to Locked On Wildcats. Leif and Jeff Carr here. And Arizona, 18-0. When I say desperate need a win, it's not desperate for Arizona in terms of like the loss would kill them, but it would not look good to lose to a 10-8 team. And Arizona has aspirations to be an all-time great team. So I'll give one thought I had in terms of the way that I see this game becoming challenging for Arizona is if Cincinnati forces a bunch of turnovers. Because Cincinnati against Iowa State was pressuring, they took away the rim. Iowa State was playing too quickly for their own good. They were playing at a frenetic pace that seemed to be instituted by Cincinnati's defense. And then at the rim, Cincinnati, in my opinion, got away with a lot of fouls. But, you know, I couldn't care less who won that game. I was just watching as a fan. But I thought they were very physical at the rim and took away the basket. Arizona puts what Tommy Lloyd talks about as rim pressure and, more importantly, foul pressure by playing two bigs. He makes teams foul you all the time. And I've created a stat. Feel free to use this one. It's called paint-oriented points. It's where you score points in the paint plus free throws made. And Arizona is elite at it. And they average 71 paint-oriented points per game. And I think they will not get there against Cincinnati. But I do think they get to around 60 because Cincinnati's going to play physically. Arizona's bigger than them. And all of a sudden, Cincinnati's physicality works against them, where I don't think it did against Iowa State. I think Cincinnati's way to win is force turnovers and make Arizona play from the perimeter. No one's been able to really do that. How can Cincinnati compete? And do you think it's likely that Arizona overwhelms Cincinnati on the interior, even though that's kind of the strength of Cincinnati?
Paint-oriented points. I like that. Pop. You're looking for the pop. And,
I'm going to start calling it pop now. I've been saying paint-oriented points and tripping over it every time.
Get to pop. And it feels like, I mean, you know, if you live in the Midwest, obviously it's a very tasty drink. But also, if you talk about baseball, you definitely want lots of pop in the bat. So pop's a good thing. No, I think that's going to be a little bit of a lesser key to this game because obviously you don't want to ever put a game in the hands of the refs. But how is this game called? Are they going to let them be a little bit more physical? Because that's going to be key for the Bearcats, where they have good size all over the court, but they definitely have some aggressiveness to them. I mean, you see a lot of aggressiveness from Buck Harris whenever he comes off the bench, sincere Buck Harris. You see a lot of aggressiveness on the defensive side of the ball from Mustafa Cham and those guys. So do they get in foul trouble very early on? Because obviously their next line isn't going to be able to keep up with those bigs in Arizona. And that's going to be a huge key, because if that is the case, then sure, Arizona is going to be able to do whatever they want offensively. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on the Bearcats on the offensive side as well, because they're not going to be able to get down low with their second level of guys that are coming off the bench. I think the way that the Bearcats are able to pull off this upset is just if they are going to shoot lights out, if they're going to have a 99 percentile game with the shot, whether it's 3-pointers, whether it's 2-pointers, whether it's from the free throw line, which in the in my lifetime, this is not a Wes Miller thing. This is a UC thing. There's something about the C with the claws and, you know, having Cincinnati on your chest. Two things happen, Leif. If we're playing like an RPG video game here, like if you wear a Cincinnati uniform, you're going to get +1 to defense and you're going to get -2 to free throw. Something about it. Nobody knows how to shoot from the stripe in this team. And it's been that way my entire life. And so I
5% this year.
well, it's bad. It's real bad. And so if Arizona is going to play a physical style on defense that forces them to the free throw line, that might actually be just as good as getting a block or getting a turnover because the Bearcats can't take advantage of it.
Yeah, Arizona shoots a lot of free throws. The paint-oriented points, the pop, to track it now. Arizona scores 57% effective field goal percentage, but more importantly, they score 58% of their points from 2, and they shoot 37% from 3. So it's not like, wow, this team can't score from 3. They just elect not to. They score 58% of their points from 2, and then 22%, which is more than their 3-pointers. So they score more points at the free throw line than they do 3-pointers. And so the goal for every team has been like, make them shoot threes. Well, they played Florida and scored 93 points and only had two 3-pointers. That's 87 points without the 3 against the biggest front court in the country. And so I really think it's hard for a team, even though the MO of Cincinnati, like you said, is defense and size and physicality. It's hard to keep Arizona out of the paint. I do expect, now let's get to like players, kind of see what we see happening in this game. I do expect Koa Peat bound to progress to the mean. He had a game that was terrible the other day. I think Cincinnati is actually uniquely well equipped to guard him. I just think that he is a dominant force and will not be held in check to 4 points and not score for 32 minutes again. And I think that Jaden Bradley played a terrible first half, a great second half. I think there's going to be a lot of regression to the mean, and Arizona is going to steadily find its way to like 80, 82, 84 points. And I just don't think Cincinnati can keep up. I would guess Arizona, who has 5 guys average over 10 per game, has 5 guys average score over 10 per game in this one. And I think Koa Peat probably leads the way. I think Braden Burries, when he's getting going, Arizona is a dynamo. Like when Burries is going, you got no chance. So if the 2 freshmen lead the way, and then you got the steadiness of Bradley, Awaka, and Krivas behind them, I think it's tough sledding for Cincinnati. And the guy that I really want, and Arizona fans really want to see get going, is Anthony Del Orso, who I think is the best pure shooter on this team. He's shooting like 32% and has really struggled recently. And I just don't think that happens as a 41% 3-point shooter last year in Big 12 play.
There is going to be a guy, and if you had to pick who it's going to be, but there's going to be a guy score 30 for Arizona, because there's something about the Bearcats that they kind of pick a guy that they're like, we're okay if this guy beats us. And that happened against West Virginia. That happened against UCF. That happens against just about every other team, where they're like, this guy can go off. We'll just kind of try our best to neutralize everybody else on the team. So is that Koa Peat for you?
I think everyone tries to stop him. And there's been the biggest thing that stops him is foul trouble. It's when Koa Peat's gotten into foul trouble in 3 games. Those 3 games, Arizona's won all of them. And they actually did so convincingly against Alabama, which was supposed to be like the matchup nightmare. But teams have been trying to double team him and make the ball come out his hands. He's a willing passer. Teams have tried stunting off the dribble. To me, really, Koa Peat plays so unselfishly at times it hinders him. But really, it's just on the defensive end, he needs to learn when to be aggressive, because he can slide his feet and he's just strong as an ox. So the biggest thing that settled Arizona in those games has been Koa Peat getting in foul trouble of his own volition. And then I think Jaden Bradley has had, I think he could be an All-American too. He's had lackluster performances in terms of halves of like, okay, like I'm going to guard a guy offensively, I won't be as aggressive. And then the second half, he's the best point guard in the country. And so I just think it's consistency. I think sometimes when you're so good and there's so many options, while I will always say it's a strength, and they come at you in waves, and you can score, like I said at the beginning, 85 points per game in Big 12 play with different guys doing it. I think there's just kind of a natural like complacency that happens when someone else is taking over. And I just want to see a little more consistency. So I know I didn't quite answer your question, but it's because there's so many guys on this team that like it's hard to choose one.
And that's where I have a hard time just seeing, like, I just don't see it would be a shock to me if the Bearcats are able to pull this off. I was honestly shocked that they were able to upset Iowa State, and I upset of Arizona will be even far more shocking, just because I don't think they're able to hang with them. And it's Baba Miller that has to have a really good game. Sean Abayev has to have a really good game. There's got to be at least 4 guys in double figures, if not 5 guys in double figures. And at least one of them's got to score over 20, and they got to win the rebounding game. And they got to make a couple of 3-pointers, and yeah, we're putting down a laundry list that I don't think they got enough detergent for.
So, fair enough. But if Cincinnati has a chance, who's going to lead the way? And then double question here. What is your final score prediction as well?
It's going to be Day Thomas. He's going to lead the way. He's going to get over 20. He's going to be knocking down 3-pointers left and right because he's the main shooter on this team. Everybody else is kind of like, man, you just really hope that they make some baskets. But yeah, Day has this weird thing about him that he has a better 3-point percentage than 2-point percentage. So you're going to see a lot of shots from behind the line from number one. But yeah, I think Day is going to be the leader for this one if they are able to pull it off. I think final score, I think it's slightly less than Ken Pom, but I still think that Arizona gets to 80. And I think the Bearcats get held to 65.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I'm going to say Koa Peat leads the way. I think it's a kind of a different way of scoring than others because this team doesn't cede size. Like they are just as big, just as physical. I just think Koa Peat gets the line. I think there's a very aggressive game plan of like, let's get Koa the ball and get his rhythm going. So I'll go Koa Peat leads the way with like 18 or something like that. And I think Arizona scores are just about 80, and I think Cincinnati kind of makes this game closer towards the end. I don't think it'll ever really be in doubt, and it'll be like a 80 to 68 type of game, like a little less than Ken Pom as well. I just think it's so hard to score a ton on Cincinnati. The one thing I would point out is Cincinnati might try to make it 2 for next for their own good, and Arizona could get runouts in a rowdy McHale, and it wouldn't stun me if Arizona wins by like 25 if Cincinnati just has a bad shooting day. Because I think to compete, like when I say compete, I'm saying like somewhere between 0 to 15, they need to shoot well. If they shoot poorly, like beyond, like under the 30% that they already shoot, I don't think it's going to be close at all.
Knowing what I know about Cincinnati sports, the fact that they just upset Iowa State, I am not confident that it's going to be a competitive game against Arizona. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, we will see. We will see. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks for tuning in, everyone, to Locked On Wildcats. Tomorrow I'll have a little further preview on this one, as well as a postcast breaking down everything that does transpire in that game late at night once that one finishes. And so make sure you subscribe to Locked On Wildcats so you get all the latest episodes right there. And follow me on Twitter at Leif Tulane. It's just my name, so interact with me there. I'd love to talk with you guys just as I do in the comments. And if Locked On Wildcats made your Spotify Wrap, prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag the National Locked On Podcast Network account for any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel where you can chat with me nonstop. For those of you who are watching on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On College Football, because tonight there is going to be a lot of talk surrounding the national championship. Well, thanks for tuning in, and bear down.